Cool. Well, yeah, thanks so much for doing this. We're super excited to, have a little chat with you. To start, you could just tell us like your name, who you are, your company. Yeah, what does your company do?
Awesome. So my name is Vrijen, also go by V, founder of Careerspan. We use conversational coaching to help people understand or candidates understand sort of their deeper value or their true strengths. And then we map that onto jobs that folks are looking to find candidates for. Essentially a way for us to get much better quality applicant data and use that in a more effective way to match.
Nice, cool. Thanks for laying that out. So, what are like the early days like? What inspired you to get this started? How long have you been doing it?
So had the original idea the 29th of, it was 29th of November 22, which I remember specifically because it was the day ChatGPT launched. And I was sort of bored, on the beach at McKinsey. For those who know, they know. And essentially it occurred to me that you could use this technology not just to generate answers or sort of output. You could actually have it ask questions and sort of spent most of that day sort of very aggressively researching, everything from like what's the value of Socratic dialogue, and is there sort of empirical stuff around what impact that has on cognition, all the way to is this tech real or is this more uh, something a little bit closer to older technologies that we've seen, right?
So you were sitting at your desk at McKinsey, ChatGPT comes out, and you spend the whole day playing with it.
I was on the beach, so I was at home.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, luckily, I mean, walking into Three World is like, walking onto the deck of the Death Star. I don't think I would have had the confidence at that point in my life to be playing with ChatGPT openly, at least at McKinsey HQ. But no, it was, yeah, I think I had a really good instinct for where, um, if not where the tech was going, what one potential use case of the tech would be. Uh,
How long was it from that day to the day you quit and started Careerspan?
2.5 months. Uh, yeah, 3.5 months because it was March 1st that I quit McKinsey.
So you were able
So,
to focus.
essentially, yeah, immediately. I had done some like startup courses at like my MBA program, but really goes to show like I heard the word product market fit maybe 1,000 times in my B school. Couldn't have told you what it was. Did not have any visceral understanding what it is. Very different case now, but yeah, pretty much immediately knew that there was value in that service for people, and more importantly, that there was value in collecting that data. Because I think I was just very early to the idea that you can match people on a qualitative basis as opposed to just where they went to school on a keyword basis.
So it sounds like you took some startup classes at B school. Had you always wanted to be a founder, or was this kind of like a distant dream?
It was an immensely distant dream. I mean, I came to the U.S. with so I'd done college in the U.S. Wasn't the best student, which I'm sure is relatable to this audience.
That's the guy that got into McKinsey.
Well, that's the thing, right? It was the McKinsey was one of the first like big jumps up that I made career wise, purely because I was actually hyper unemployable despite being in a hot market. Because I had no tech background, I had a coaching background. Taught some standardized tests. Credit to me and my career coaching skills, I was able to parlay that into a narrative about how that experience would help McKinsey in a variety of like marketing and sales situations. So turned that into an offer, but was always knew I wasn't a really good fit for it. So I think but just never had the confidence to even imagine myself as a startup person. But also, yeah, just felt so strongly about the opportunity that I had to dive in.
Nice. So, what was the timeline exactly? You said you went to business school and then you went to McKinsey and then you started this like three and a half. Like, how far into McKinsey were you then?
I was maybe 3 or 4 months into being at McKinsey, maybe 4 or 5 months, and then yeah, 3 months after that I was out. So it was pretty sort of firm in the desire to build in that area. I don't know where that confidence came from. It was absolutely fucking unearned. But I think it was certainly motivated by the realization that like people need this, right? Like people need someone to um, essentially just be available to them to ask them questions about who they are, I'm sure, Michael, you are very engaging with your kids and spend a lot of time asking them how they are, what their internal experience is. A lot of folks don't have that privilege, right? It's a privilege to have parents that have the time and the luxury and the awareness to bring that out of you at an early age. And I would argue 90% of folks don't have the ability to self-represent that way. So really the problem is that it's not that, with all due respect to resume generators, they're bad technology because we don't need resume generation. We need people to understand what to say about themselves. The resume is just the conduit for communicating that signal. And so that's sort of how I try to encourage folks to look at the hiring process nowadays.
Mm. So who's your main audience? Is it a lot of people like early in their career, like people looking for career pivots or all of the above?
Kind of all of the above. We realized, it was a particularly tricky marketplace maneuver because the tech on the applicant side is so generally applicable, right? Everyone, even if we've had former chiefs of staff at FANG companies, we've had Hugo Award-winning science fiction writers, and also HVAC technicians and like public school teachers using Careerspan, right? Like I would defy, a lot of folks outside of social media networks to have quite the range of customers that we do, right? Or at least folks that benefit a lot from the experience. Meanwhile, on the employer side, what we're finding is that startups from seed to A are kind of great because, well, everyone's aware of how screwed hiring is, and we'll worry about the reasons why another day. But it's all, once your referrals are tapped out, once your network is tapped out, scaling that as a talent strategy is very hard unless you commit your or someone else's time waiting through resumes. And so that's sort of the value add we bring to those companies.
So it sounds like you work with both, but is your primary ICP, is it the employer or the employee?
The person paying us is the employer.
Got it.
Is the employer. It is surprisingly hard to monetize unemployed people that are under emotional stress. Who would have thunk it? But yeah, no, it was so just to touch back on the timeline thing, we essentially went through March 1st, quitting McKinsey.
Yep.
Part of that mass exodus of folks around that time, and essentially dove straight into work, raised friends and family around about 200, 250. Picked up a head of AI after a few false dawns with, subpar co-founding options.
Oh, right. Technical. Or you weren't technical?
I was not technical, no.
So what were you building in the beginning, or what were you doing in the very beginning?
Man, when they say don't start a company with two non-technical co-founders, I now understand why, right? It was immensely difficult. Yeah, it was immensely difficult. Neither of us really had tech pedigree.
I did the same thing,
yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, no, it was the blind leading the blind. It was like me just like fucking out and finding out in real time every day, right? And so I would easily say maybe the good portion of that first year was burned, and I think that was definitely something we carried with us throughout the company. But at the same time, we got very lucky. We got a brilliant head of AI. Who built out, was building multi-agent orchestration in 2003, before folks were even thinking about that as a concept.
Yeah.
So I think the good thing was we were very early building solid, reliable tech on very good sort of first principles engineering. And luckily, because I had such a great person to sort of learn from a product and technical perspective, I think I had a lot of the fundamentals that more recently, as I've started to actually build and vibe code myself, those fundamentals have actually helped me, kind of go above and beyond in many ways.
Got it. So were the early days trying to find that technical partner, or was it trying to find customers?
It was trying to find a technical partner because, I think we can all admit vibe coding does great now, but 2 years ago it was not there, right? It certainly wasn't there for someone like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was still spaghetti. So we were in this weird situation where we had to build out something and something concrete, and to have it be a rather seamless conversational experience was actually quite taxing technically, especially for a team that was still, going through a lot of growing pains, and specifically a product leader myself that was going through a lot of growing pains. But I think once we sort of established, I think the first moment it sort of clicked for me was in some of our early testing, we had an extremely high adoption rate with female public school teachers that were trying to transition into tech, which is like a very weird, very niche sort of thing. You wonder what the signal there is. It's actually people that are not famous about bragging about themselves and are going from one environment, where they're very used to, communicating what they're skilled at to a new environment like tech or ed policy or something like that, where they had to essentially rewrite their story, rewrite how they presented themselves, rethink how they thought of themselves, and then turn that into this, professional document that other people have been writing for their whole lives, right? And so that's sort of when we knew, okay, there's this need that people have to self-express. They don't really know how to turn that into the actionable signal. And once we had sort of built that out and obviously realized, hey, people want this, but we're struggling to get them to pay for it. That was when we sort of went more so to the institutional direction and it tried a bunch of things. Tried selling to universities, tried selling to career centers. I think one of the greatest pains in my life has been trying to sell to universities. I don't think I'm ever going to try that again. But yeah, it was a lot of sort of wandering around until we found much stronger sort of alignment, both on the customer side and the employer side.
Got it.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Oh, am I muted? Oh, Mike's muted.
I think Michael's muted.
Am I still? I don't know.
You're good.
I'm just fucking this entire interview up. It's great. V, so much of the value seems to be the ability to help employees tell their own story. But it sounds like your core customer is the employer. Like, what do the employers see and get out of Careerspan?
On a really sort of simple level, what are we all trying to do in this sort of, that seed to Series A stage hiring? You have a certain amount of time you can allocate to going through the talent pipeline, whatever form that may be, recruiters sending you resumes, inbound, whatever that may be. And we're all trying to optimize for, how many promising, worthwhile candidates do we see for the least amount of effort? Again, I think we can be candid and say that is ultimately the optimization that's being made. Now, historically, our options have been, just accepting that we have to read a lot of resumes. But before AI, the resume meant something, right? It meant something because the words on the page couldn't just be generated out of nowhere with complete ease unless you were outright lying. And that has its own sort of problems. Or or it was the words on the page, but that still required you reading it, processing it, like a human brain had to digest that information and turn that into some actionable conclusion about the candidate, right? All of these very involved processes. So when AI comes around, people are like, great, AI can reason, AI can read this, AI can handle this for me. Unfortunately, the problem is that AI can also do the, hey, let me generate a fake resume. AI can also do the, what do you need to say to get pass on this ATS, which is a completely questionable and bunk technology, I think, in many ways, or at least most manifestations of it are. What are you really supposed to do? And so I think for us, where we found a lot of alpha with recruiters and with employers and a variety of folks that essentially want to build out their own talent pipeline is, you actually need to know someone deeply. You need to be able to match them not just on the skills that you're looking for, like, Node.js, but what we really care about is, are they going to be a cultural fit? Are they going to add to the team and the dynamic? Or is it going to be subtractive to bring them on into the dynamic? And then, the stat I'll end with is 46% of hires fail by the 18-month mark. 90% of the reason they fail, it's just better than a coin toss. That was pre-AI. Lots of reasons to think it'll be worse now.
Really?
But
go
90,
through
yeah.
those reasons. Well,
So I'll tell you the reason. Second half of the stat is 90% of that is a values, mindset, or soft skills mismatch. So what you can conclude there is that we're actually very good at figuring out whether someone can do the underlying job. Right. And I think, again, most of the folks watching this, hopefully they'll consult their priors and realize, the times that someone really fucked it up for me was not when they couldn't do the actual task. Most founders at our level are capable of discerning who's able to do the thing.
Right.
It is whether they're able to do the thing at this company, in this team, in this position, or in this particular scenario, or under these constraints, right? And that's something that is a qualitative judgment on who someone is under a dynamic where that person is self-interested and wants to lie to you, right? And that is at the back of every employer's mind, whether they admit it or not, that like, hey, what if this person's BSing me, taking me for a ride? And so we respond by just throwing in more resume, more assessments, throwing in more rounds of interviews. but all you're doing is adding more data to the pile for consideration without actually, cutting the Gordian knot and saying, what are the most essential things to know about this person, right? Which are essentially, what are the trade-offs? Bring this person in. What are they going to add to the environment? What do I lose?
So we're really good at interviewing for function, but not so good at interviewing for fit, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely not, right?
And you solved that problem.
Right. And that's the problem is, to do that, you need to know a ton about the candidate.
Right.
And that is, I think, essentially where, the sort of slog of building out a marketplace in this particular context came from, engaging with folks and persuading them that, hey, using this not only has intrinsic benefit, but will also sort of help bring jobs to you.
How do you guys find all that cultural and fit information? How do you learn that like personal stuff about how like a candidate's actually going to function?
So there is some relatively major news on a professional front for me down the pipeline that, depending on, I don't know when this is going to be live. Some context may be missing for why I have such a strong fucking POV on this. But essentially the insights that you need to know about someone from an informational perspective are just, how do they behave? How do they think? How do they interact with others? Right. And so the ideal circumstance to figure that out is to just observe someone. Right.
Yep.
We obviously can't do that necessarily. So what's the second best? Is to get them to tell you about it.
Yep.
As I said earlier, you can't really trust them.
Yep.
But lying is a sprint. It's not a marathon. Right. And psychologically, when you get someone into the perspective of, I need to mull over the substance of what I have done, and you're being asked questions that are meant to induce reflection, not test you, right? It's just a completely different way of drawing information out of people that, unless you've done enough coaching or mentorship, will be hard to relate to. But if for the folks that have done that, I think it hopefully that distinction makes sense. And so video interviews are flawed technology, right? Because your best candidates are going to scoff at it, and your worst candidates are going to be stressed out and going to perform poorly. In fact, they may be good candidates, but they're going to perform worse because most people don't take well to that kind of stressed assessment scenario, right? What is much more productive is to decouple the process of getting to know someone from the process of evaluating them. And that's essentially our broader thesis for like how matching can be solved in a talent context. Is you actually we have to make hiring non-adversarial. We have to give employers really a good reason for helping candidates in this way. And that reason is, you don't waste time. You can, basically scan against thousands of folks on a semantic basis within the matter of like an hour or two. And most importantly, and something that we have a few pilots in the works with VCs and such, is essentially just sticking up a talent pipeline, right? Alumni Ventures is VC told me that they had 10,000 hits on their job board during peak weeks, over the course of a year, right? But the best case scenario is those folks are just, crashing against a wall, right? Because where are you supposed to go after that, right? Like, just regular apply, cold apply. We all know that cold apply isn't really working now, right? So it's a waste of time for the candidate. It doesn't really direct them in some meaningful direction. And worst of all, for the founders that are being good folks and trying to give every inbound candidate a fair shake, you're just sending more crap their way. Right. So VCs are actually, what we're starting to see is them realizing, hey, why am I paying Getro 10, 15 grand a year for what is basically an ad that just, fills up my Portco CRM more, and also leads to them not solving the underlying problem and continuing to pay recruiters 10 to 15% every year. Why not just build my own talent pipeline, right? Why not just stick a thing on there that says, hey, are you interested in working at one of our Portcos? Come into this flexible entry sort of, pipeline, and you'll be in the pipeline. And, when job comes up, we'll scan against you. Right. And so that's where we're seeing with these folks, specifically the niche that we've honed in on is folks that want to build pipelines for the future and are willing to, tolerate the fact that they will be sort of bringing in a lot of people, but only seeing very few candidates.
So V, what's the future of recruiting look like in your mind? Like, the AI is writing the resume, the AI is reviewing and reading the resume. Like, what ends up happening? Like, Jordan and I and you, we just get candidates in our inbox of like, hey, this thing we should hire.
Do you guys play Age of Empires or like any sort of strategy game?
Yeah.
you know how there's like a fog of war, like you can only see so far ahead.
Yeah.
Everyone's fog of war is basically the first 100 to 300 candidates you give a shit about reading the resume, right? Because everyone that applies after that point, guess what? They're not hearing back. We know they're not hearing back, right? Even out of the first 300, which I'm being very charitable and implying that a busy founder will read 300 resumes with a less than 1% conversion, right? But even if you do that, it just is more frustrating. It's more like bothersome than anything else. And so I think in truth, the real question for me is who is going to set up the infrastructure to collect human data at scale? Obviously, we would like for that to be us. But I think that really what society needs to avoid some sort of apocalyptic scenario where, effectively your dream candidate could be 5 blocks over from you, but you would never know, right? And that is not just like, oh, it's always as bad as it's always, it's objectively worse than before because that candidate is no longer fighting with everyone else in New York City. They're not just battling with everyone else with an auto apply sitting in Sri Lanka that, just the AI just chose to apply to your job. They're also competing against, basically everyone under the sun that's trying to fit through the small pipeline. And so I think but if we develop that infrastructure, we get rid of the resume, which, just a little pointer there. I think once we get rid of some of these old practices and beliefs around what it takes to understand people, hopefully we'll have a more positive hiring landscape.
So it sounds like you have big announcements coming on the horizon. Without having any spoiler alerts or anything, like what could someone that is listening to this or reading about this, how can they help you? What do you guys need the most right now?
So one of the things that we have been starting to realize, and I personally have been starting to realize, is the extent to which it isn't just about getting people jobs anymore. It is quite literally about figuring out how people stay relevant, right? And so on a personal note, I think what is most interesting and sort of where I'm looking to figure out things next is, not just help people represent themselves better, not just get the job, but actually helping people that are high agency but lack maybe the context or the insights or just the structure to become technical enough to be dangerous, right? That's, I think, that the new goal for any non-technical person that wants to stay relevant is be technical enough to be dangerous. That's going to be a moving target. And luckily, it's only going to be moving hopefully in a direction where you need to know less technical stuff to be effective. But that is still the direction to go in. And what we're looking to do is figure out, whether that's through an acquisition or through partners that we work with, who all are interested in either helping their non-technical staff level up in that way, or find non-technical staff or technical staff with those qualities, with those specific attributes that you can't just pick from a drop-down file or from a drop-down list, that you actually have to, make the effort to cultivate the data on these folks. But then you could really know how to put together a team in a much higher success rate than 46%.
So if I heard this correctly, you are looking for companies or people that are not necessarily technical now, but are looking or striving to become more technical. You're trying to look for people to kind of help bridge that gap.
That's right. That's right. Or I guess to be most specific, founders that want their technical teams to be leveled up perhaps collectively, but in a way that sort of makes them more effective and more employable. So there's a little bit of sort of missing context that I'm hoping will be filled in over the next week that will make all of this less cryptic.
Cool.
But by and large, I think those are sort of the two directions that we're looking.
We can do a follow-up to this in a week.
I would love to, man. I mean,
I
the moment we turn
a Harry
on
Potter book, but I'm like missing a chapter,
yeah, I mean, the moment we turn off the recording, I'll happily fill you in. I think
I'm like
easier
this Voldemort character they keep talking about,
Yeah. Who's this professional it that shall not be named? But yeah, no, it's all sort of exciting stuff, and I think the future of hiring is I think stressful for a lot of people, and especially for candidates, but lots of promising stuff nevertheless.
That is definitely true, and you're doing a great job of trying to bridge that gap between all of the missing blanks. V, I'm very curious.
Thank you.
A lot of the business stuff. Let's talk about the founder stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Being a founder is fucking stressful. Recruiting is stressful. Helping people recruit is stressful. all of that is super stressful. How do you stay sane? What do you do? What are your hacks?
Um, I would question the assumption that I have stayed sane in any capacity over the last few years. But assuming that that is true at all, yeah, I was talking to like actually one of the other members of the club, and I was like, yeah, I feel so lame that all I say is, I like to vibe code and hang out with my friends. But, I think in many ways, I over the course of this journey, have figured out the stuff that really matters. I've realized that, there was maybe a point in my life where I thought, oh, maybe I need to have more hobbies. No, I'm a plenty high agency person. There's a lot that I want to do and there's a lot I get out of life. I think it was just about like really shedding any assumptions of like what I have to do or, how much I have to socialize with what kind of group, and instead just focus on what's the stuff that lets me get up in the morning, kick ass, and let's focus on that to the extent that I need to work other stuff in, what are the minimal compromises I can make to work that in.
So hanging out with friends and doing the things you love. That's the answer. And you love the vibe code and hang out with friends.
Yeah. Basically prototyping and hanging out with my friends. I mean, that's why the dinners are so nice. I just get to sit there and yap and hear about what other people are up to and then go back and code.
Beautiful. I know I've asked you this question before, but I'm curious, just so everyone else, why are you guys in New York City?
I being an SF, so much of the last like week has been, for better or for worse, like a discussion about New York and how New York stacks up next to SF and why, I choose to continue to be there. I think it was a hard decision because in many ways it would have been much better for the company for me to move to Boston or for my co-founder to move here. It just wasn't possible. But I think to the extent that I could have lived anywhere, SF is exciting, it's fun, and I certainly hope to like spend more time here. But I think there's something awesome about New York that is just, it's more human, Like with all due respect to the folks in SF, they're very creative and they're very smart, but I get a lot of that on Twitter and I'm able to ingest a lot of that and kind of develop my own POV on it. I don't necessarily need to be surrounded by that. Although it's incredibly joyful when I get to like dip my toes and just like go all in for 24 hours or so. But New York's just more human, right? You just see more of like more slices of life. And at the end of the day, if I think of like the most salient insights of Careerspan, the stuff that I know within the industry, I will be able to say, I was first to that, or I pointed that out far earlier than others. It's fucking nothing to do with the tech, right? It's all to do with the deeper understanding of the human need that is, we need to figure out whether this person should be on our team. How do we answer that? How do we answer that in a way that is like not alienating, right? That is like is fair to that candidate, but also helps you achieve what you want, which is to get the best talent at the best price that is the most down to work for you. So I think that's where sort of try to take my cues.
New York, more human. I like it. That should be on a t-shirt.
Hey man, let's try to make it happen. Who's building this?
The t-shirt?
The New York specific t-shirts, exactly.
I think we can figure it out.
Yeah, there's enough talent
You're
here.
a high agency guy, I'm sure we can figure it out.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. High agency, but maybe lacking in time, as with all of us.
My next question is, what would people be surprised to learn about you?
It's funny. I think a lot of folks are surprised that I'm not American.
Okay.
And that I'm actually, and not only am I not American, that I'm originally Indian and that I've lived in 3 or 4 countries at this point. But generally like present as pretty American and sort of, could have been born in Jersey or some part of like the Northeast.
Nothing wrong with Jersey.
Nothing wrong with Jersey, man. I would proudly associate. But I think I come off in many ways as like super American, and the founder energy and all of that doesn't help either. But I think people are surprised to find out that I'm not originally from this soil.
What other countries did you live in, and when did you move to the U.S.?
India for 12 years, Bangladesh for 5 years, Singapore for 5 years, and the U.S. for whatever's the difference.
So is U.S. the longest?
The U.S. is the longest now, yeah. So I think just this year that'll be over 12 years on continental soil, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And where do you call home? Like, what do you identify as home?
Uh, when people ask me where I'm from, I always have like the stammer and the pause and like
Sure.
tons of hedging. I think home is a nebulous concept, right? I think I'm part of that sort of labeled like TCK, third culture kids sort of group. Um, and I think the really cool thing is like home is just where, I'm getting shit done and where the people I care about are, right? And I think the awesome thing is
Wow, what an answer.
when you
I
thank
love
you.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trade-off, right? A lot of folks have like a childhood home. And I see how yeah, and I think that would have been awesome, right? Have like a childhood bedroom or have like posters on the wall and shit. Like that would be amazing. But I have legitimately lived in over, 20 houses, apartments. I calculated the other day, over my 33 years of life. Um, you just get more used to change. You get more used to sort of transitions. And it's like, yeah, it sucks that all of your loved ones aren't clustered in one place. It's not that convenient. But then you have loved ones everywhere, right? I can go to so many of the world's best cities and just have a couch to crash on and a person to drink beer with. So, I think that is one of the better treasures to find in life.
Right. All right. V, you've been in the US for a while now. You've been a founder for a while now too. What's been like the biggest surprise? What's been the biggest lesson as during your founder journey?
Um, the biggest surprise has been I'm trying to make this like funny, but not like too wildly politically incorrect. I see now why
We don't.
uh,
We can edit this out. It's okay.
amazing. No, I was just gonna say I see why founders are such massive egotists, which I say with love.
Sure.
Because the biggest learning for me, or the decisions that I regret the most in retrospect, are the ones where it's not at all to say I was always right, but it's to say the decisions I regret the most are the ones where my gut was telling me something, but I didn't trust it,
Yeah.
or I didn't sort of,
too.
and I think a lot of us are haunted by the decisions where it's not the decisions we made that were wrong, it's the decisions we didn't make. You're like, fuck, if only I'd done that. If I had just put my foot down and I think I had a really long time of just like making decisions like that back to back.
Do you have a specific one you remember?
Oh man, I mean, the shift to hiring, right? I think again, there's definitely a case to be made that we could have, if we did this a year and a half ago, we would have been early in another different way. But I think we would have also, I mean, there are some other companies that I won't be so an uncouthest name raised millions off of like, simpler concepts as far as like the data acquisition is concerned. I think
Yep.
our mistake was, and my mistake was really focusing on trying to collect the largest, most dense bulk of data that we can collect in a way that was still really human centric. And those were the kind of lessons where I'm like, oh shit, my instincts were wrong on that. But that's stuff that I've luckily baked in pretty easily over the 3 years. I'm pretty good at figuring out when I'm wrong. The evidence slaps me in the face pretty easily.
That that resonates with me.
But I'm glad, yeah.
Why do you think founders do that, or maybe why do you think more specifically you did that, and I've done that in the past, where our guts told us something, and we just waited, we hesitated, we didn't act on it.
I mean, I've often wondered like why is it that like being like, let's say like, kind of cutthroat, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
Right? Why does that produce like good outcomes in some time scales, but horrendous outcomes in other time scales? Right? And it's just almost like what's the buff or what's the benefit? Like it's almost as though when you're trying to make a decision that is ethical and grounded and PR friendly and sort of fulfills all of the needs. This is just my perspective. And the goal is we're all folks that want to fucking have it all, right? And so my instinct is I want to have it all. I don't want to upset my team. I also want to manage their expectations, but I also want to get what I want, but I also want to do this. And I think I realized over time that on a certain number of decisions, it just so happens that the moment I made the decision, I was carrying the wrong cluster of variables in my head, right? And I just happened to, whether that was, oh, I don't want to upset this person, so fuck it, let's just accede to, I have multiple design and product decisions that I regret because I was just like, fuck it, whatever. This person like seems to know more than me. They feel a lot of conviction. That's wrong. I should have been the one feeling the goddamn conviction, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that is something that I'm hoping to continue to cultivate, but have been more sensitive to.
Yeah. My way of summarizing your answer and how I actually feel is the reason I hesitated on all those decisions is because I was scared. I
Yeah,
was scared of upsetting someone. I was scared of being wrong. I was scared of public failure.
right. And actually, those are two sides of the same coin, right? Why do I want everyone to be fucking happy except me? Fear, right? And so I think the truth is that it is exactly as you said. It comes from a place of not trusting yourself, which again is related to fear, or not trusting your analysis, or even just the information you have in the scenario, right? Which could have nothing to do with you, but could still be such a source of sort of insecurity or concern that you throws you off your game.
Wow. B, I really feel like I learned something in this conversation. I really appreciate this. Hey, again, thank you. We'll let you know, or let us know when the news is official and everything's out. And then
Yep.
if you're up for it, or if it makes sense, we might do a follow up. We'll take it. We'll figure it out when the news hits.
Sounds good, y'all. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.
Hey.
Yeah.
And hypothetical congrats
Take
again.
care.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.